Hey folks, welcome to the Houseplant Coach. This is Veronica with Oh Happy Plants, and this morning, as this beautiful light is coming in through the one east window I have in the main part of my house, and it's a very small one too. I have another east window that's over in my laundry room that I have plants on the windowsill, but it's not very big, and it also doesn't let any light into the main part of the house because it's basically a laundry hallway. Anyways, this morning I'm just like, you know what? Let's talk about why east light is amazing, because that east window right now is actually shining light on, is it that? Goodness, or is that a reflection? Something is shining light on this money tree that's all the way on the opposite side of the house. Maybe it's reflecting off of something. Maybe it's the sun reflecting off my truck outside. I don't know. Anyway, it's a mystery. So I'm looking at this gorgeous plant with its gorgeous light and thinking about how when we understand the mechanics of something, well, for me at least, that's when it sticks in my head as usable knowledge. Otherwise, people forget which direction their houses face. And like, I've always been good with direction because it's a useful thing, but people when they move into a house, they don't know which direction things face. And that always seems really interesting, especially if they have plants. It seems interesting to me. But if we don't understand how light functions throughout the day, like how light goes through the atmosphere, then we're not necessarily going to remember what light is best for our plants. So that's what today is about. And it's going to be really quick because I have to go. We have to do a word that I shall not say with the puppy. And we're just not going to mention it right now because I haven't showered yet. So anyways, the first thing to do is find out where the sun comes up. And then the second thing to do is just something to remember when the air cools. Like if you haven't listened to the episode about relative humidity, I think it's one of the very first ones, maybe the second or third episode. Go and listen to that because it talks about how basically the more excited the electrons get, the more excited the little particles in the air get, the more moisture they can hold. Which means the hotter the air gets, the more moisture it can hold. The more moisture will evaporate. And I'm sorry I'm using that word a whole lot if you hate it. I think it's the word without the URE that people hate more. But anyway, so water vapor is held in greater quantity the hotter the air is. 100% humidity, if it's 90 degrees, is going to feel like you're walking through a freaking swimming pool. 100% humidity at 60 degrees probably just feels like extra cold because it like sticks to you more, but it's not going to feel like super moist really. And that's the word. There's the word. Sorry. It's not going to feel extra damp necessarily. Let's use that one instead. So the reason for that is because the actual amount of water vapor is going to increase exponentially the higher the temperature gets, or maybe not exponentially, but like it increases a lot. Like just as an example, this is not actually the actual amount this is not true numbers, but if you just pretend that you have a room that's a certain volume and 1 cup of water is dissolved into the air, essentially is vaporized into the air at 60 degrees Fahrenheit. And then you crank and say there's like a swimming pool in the room, and that's 100% humidity because there's this big open swimming pool. And then you crank the heat up to 90 degrees, many more cups of water are going to dissolve into the air. They're going to evaporate into the air. I'm using the wrong phrasing. I'm bad at words. I only had 1 cup of coffee this morning, so excuse my lack of brain. So basically, I'm talking about that because then we got to think about the reverse is when you have humidity in the air and it's a higher temperature, like in the afternoon outside. And then as the night cools off, you have the dew point in the morning. And the dew point is the point at which the amount of water that's being held as vapor in the air can no longer be held by the air because it gets too cool. And then automatically at that point, like if it hits 100, sorry, I've got an alarm going off. If it hits 100% humidity and then the temperature dips even lower, like say it was 60% humidity at 80 degrees and then the temperature goes down to 60 degrees and somewhere in there it hits 100% humidity, which is the maximum amount of water that the air can hold. And then the temperature dips even lower. Some of the water is just going to fall out of the air. It's going to settle as dew on the plants and on the everything, on your truck, on your house. If you were sleeping out in the grass, it's going to settle on you. You're going to wake up totally wet. So anyway, that's what the dew point is. And so what you're going to notice is, and it can also settle as fog too, if it was really, really humid the day before. And we actually, when I first moved to Tacoma, story time, we had mornings that were really foggy because of this. And then by the afternoon, the air would heat up, the sun came out, and it would burn it all off. And by that, I mean it would heat the air enough so the air would just hold the water as vapor instead of little droplets forming fog. Okay, so the other piece is that the more actual water droplets there are in the air, because the air has cooled to the point that they can't just be evaporated anymore, the mellower the light is that comes through. Basically, the water droplets are kind of like a filter, like sunglasses. So think of the morning air as sunglasses for your plants. And this is why east windows are gentle light. Even direct sun through an east window is not going to burn usually the most sensitive plants, unless you have a plant that's in that window when it's like 11 a.m. and there's direct sun on it. That might be a little intense because typically it starts to warm up by then and burn off all that water vapor. And by that, I mean evaporate it. But yeah, typically east window light, morning light, is really easy on plants. And that's why people are like, oh yeah, it's perfect for plants. It's only perfect because you don't have to fucking worry about it. Like, you don't have to worry about it burning your plants at all. And so conversely, if you have plants in a south or west facing window, south sometimes can be okay as long as the plants aren't like getting direct sun. If they're like a little ways back from the window. Sorry, I had another alarm. A little ways back from the window, like a couple of feet back from the window, even a plant that doesn't necessarily want to be like cooked will do fine or great just a few feet back from the window. And I think there was an episode on the inverse square law, how the further from a light source you get, the less light there is, basically, just because it spreads out. I can't remember where that episode is. It might have been one of the earlier ones, but I cannot remember, so apologies on that. If you go to the member site, members.ohhappyplants.online, it's totally free to set up a profile in there. You can ask questions in there. That's the best way to ask plant questions, like asking me directly, because I get in there and I try to answer questions at least once a month. And I'm working on doing that more frequently, slowly working on that, working on figuring out how to do that. But that's the way to ask plant questions if you want to ask me. And it's totally free. Again, you do need to set up a profile, but it's just like creating like a Facebook profile, but with less information. I'm not going to require that you prove who you are or whatever the fuck, because I honestly, like, if you want to make up a name, go ahead and do that. Just don't be a jerk in there. But nobody is. I have not come across anybody being a jerk in there, because y'all are lovely. So anyway, that's wonderful. I love you guys. That's wonderful. Okay, so thank you for that. Thanks for not being jerks. And where was I? Oh, you can go in there to the podcast section, and you should be able to search for keywords in there to find specific episodes. Often I find that podcast players are really hard to search. So like if you go to Apple Podcasts and go and like search for the Houseplant Coach and then for some keywords, it won't necessarily return you much. But if you go into the member site and search that, I have specifically set it up to be searchable. So that's a really good way to find good plant care information that like is actually freaking relevant instead of just like relying on me to read your mind about what you're struggling with and make an episode about it. That doesn't work. Okay. Right. So south-facing windows are going to be more intense than east-facing windows, obviously, but they're totally doable. West-facing windows can be problematic because the sun will shine in those windows, especially really big ones, or like, you know, real, like if you're up in a skyscraper, if you have an apartment on the 19th floor and there's nothing on the other side of you and all your windows face west, it's going to be really fucking hot in there, for one. You might want to get some like sheer curtains or something, and it could burn your plants because that light is coming directly through and it no longer has the moisture in the air from the morning. Or rather, all of the moisture is like the little fog droplets are dissipated, they're evaporated. So they're no longer providing that buffer. You know, there's no sunscreen, there's no sunglasses for your plants in the form of water droplets in the air anymore. And so I hope that helps, like, understand why different directions are different. Essentially, the later in the day it gets, like, obviously, direct sun in the middle of the day outside is a problem, but indoors we don't really deal with that. Unless you have a plant in a south-facing window with sun directly on it. We don't really deal with that because our homes have roofs. So, like, if you have a skylight and you have a plant directly underneath it and you're like, why is this motherfucker getting crispy? There's your answer. But if you just have a roof with no skylights, you're not going to have any issues with that usually. But, like, the 11 to 3 that you need to wear sunscreen outside, those hours. A plant like right up against a window in a south-facing window could have a problem, but aside from that, you're not really going to see any issues from south-facing exposure, typically. But west-facing, because it catches some of that midday light, and then it just intensifies because it's beaming directly through there, and you don't have that extra buffer of the water in the air, like actual droplets in the air. That's where I typically see people running into problems. But again, pay attention to your house. Like, my entire premise with plant care is your situation is unique. So we got to learn the mechanics of everything so we can apply them to our individual situations. Your plant is unique. Your situation is unique. Your watering style is unique. The plant's setup, how big the pot is, how much foliage is on it, i.e. how much photosynthesizing it's doing and how much water it's using because of that. Everything is unique to your plant. So that's why we just got to pay attention to our plants and learn how to listen to them. And yeah, that's the episode. I hope that helps. I just got a wild hair because of my pretty little tree right here. I'm going to post a picture of this tree. So this money tree is, it's Pachyra or Pachyra aquatica. I don't know how to pronounce the first thing. There should be a fucking guide to that. When scientists make up a plant name, they should have to say it into a microphone. But I guess a lot of these were named before we had microphones. Anyway, this little guy is so happy and looks like I bought it brand new, like from a store, and then it's grown from there really well. And you want to know what happened? I had this plant in an office building for, 5 years, and it got crazy tall and leggy. And then I brought this one here, and it lived outside for a while. Oh, but last summer, yeah. So when I brought it here, it was after the 2 months of 2 to 2.5 months of I didn't water my plants because my husband died, and like shit happens. I have pictures of all of the dead leaves from that plant cleanup when I went around and got out the ladder at my old house and actually went around and watered everything. It took me at least 2 months to get to, because I was just in shock. And also I was like, all of a sudden I had to figure out how, like, Who at age 36 knows how to write an obituary or plan a memorial service while you're in shock? Like, that's not fun. So anyway, and today is actually a year and a half, and I'm doing pretty good. So that's good. But this little guy was definitely not looking his best. And so I brought it up here. And what I did was I chopped everything off. I'll put a picture of this plant as the episode thumbnail. I chopped everything off so it was just sticks. And then I left it outside for the summer and just kept it really watered, because outside, obviously, it's going to drink more and dry out more because of the airflow and the heat. So then it just started fluffing up again. So if you're going to do that, you have to take all of the foliage off, because foliage that has lived inside for any period of time, even just like a month, is going to be less able to protect itself from sun than foliage that emerges outside. And so it's okay that a brand new baby leaf is in direct sun as long as it grew out there. But if you have a plant that you cut it all off and you had it inside and it started to sprout and then you put it outside, that new growth is going to sunburn right away. And sunburns can actually affect the immune system of the plant. So don't do that, because I let a plant sunburn one time. I had 2 Dracaenas, and one of them I chopped off as soon as it was outside. And the other one got sunburnt because I just was too busy. I think it was when my stepmom died years ago. I think that's what happened. Anyway, grief does things to us and does things to our plants. Sorry, guys. But yeah, so the other one I put outside and I completely spaced out chopping it up, got super sunburned, and then I cut it off, and it took 4 months longer to resprout than that first one did. So that's a negative impact from the plant's immune system getting a sunburn. It's a very real thing. So do not just shove your plants outside and be like, oh, if they sunburn, it's okay. I see influencers telling people to do this, and I'm just like, come on. Yeah. And then they're like, yeah, it impacts it, but then it bounces back. And I'm like, okay, but what if you didn't, and it didn't need to bounce back? And how much more improved growth would you see because of that? Let's just think about it. So anyway, I fully recommend, if you have an etiolated plant or something insanely leggy that you're just like, oh my God, this is unmanageable, or something that's lost half of its leaves and just looks really scraggly, chop that fucker up, cut every inch of foliage off, and shove it outside for the summer. And as soon as it's above 50 to 55 at night, most plants can go outside. I wouldn't do that with a blooming orchid if it's in bloom right now, but also, you can't really chop all of the green foliage off of an orchid and put it outside in the direct sun, because that would take the entire plant off, because that's basically what they are. But anything with a woody stem can do that. So your trees and shit, that's a category of plants, trees and shit. Anyway, I'm done. I hope you guys have a great day. Bye.